Hey, welcome to Tough Guys. On this episode, we have something really special. We are building a custom wall-mounted gun rack, rifle rack. You'll see some more details as we move along here. It is actually a part of a collaboration, so I'll put some information up here on how you can see more information about that part of it, because it is going to be a giveaway, and then also some links to check us out on social media. We really appreciate the support everywhere you can. And let's not delay, we'll get right into it. I'll show you the drawings that I did first, just some sketches, and then let's take a look at the lumber before we actually start trying to cut everything and start putting it together. All right, just to start off the drawings, I actually started this one night on just a sticky note, and I had drawn kind of these 5 vertical columns in a box that could be mounted on the wall, and then I actually measured one of our rifles to see, how tall it would be and if it would fit or not. And this kind of evolved into a better drawing that is here. This is kind of what we're going for as far as the picture frame type shape, with a couple of decorative pieces of wood on the front. This is actually recessed into the back, which I'll show you when we look at the lumber here in a second. But let me show you some more details on how this trim would look and the actual lumber. So this was my first test when I was trying to seat these 9mm shells into a piece of wood, and I did not have a very good bit there, so it was like tearing up the face, and then you can see on the back it kind of blows out as well. And this was too small of a hole, so I had to get a different bit. I was kind of messing with maybe leaving them sticking out a little bit as opposed to recessing them, but let me show you my second trial of this. Okay, so here was my second test at 1-inch spacing, and this was just in a little piece of plywood that I had, and I'm actually really happy with how that turned out. I'm still trying to figure out if I'm going to need to stain the wood first, so I don't, muck up the front of these and make them look really ugly with the stains. So that's the idea for the trim here around the edge. So this is what you kind of see on the face of this thing all the way around. And then the rifles would mount, or shotguns would mount up inside of there vertically. You kind of reach them in, set them in place, and they would be vertically standing up inside of this thing mounted on the wall. So that's the idea. This is kind of the trim. And now let's take a look at what the rest of the thing is going to be built of. I decided to build this one out of cedar wood, not only for the look of it, but also just to try to keep the weight down overall. I was worried that it was going to be a little bit heavy. These are our pieces that are going to be that trim or that edge that's going to have the casing mounted in the face of it. And then these are for the interior dividers and some accent pieces. And then these larger boards, which are the 1x6s, are going to actually be together for the sides of the box. So that kind of shows you the depth of the box. And then we've got these birch plywood pieces that I'm gonna try to stain to match, that we're gonna fill in the back side of it. So that's a quick overview of the lumber. Okay, to start building the box, what we want to do is, I want a max height of 36 inches. I am not gonna miter these corners. I'm actually gonna build this to where the top and the bottom plates kind of stick onto the sides. So knowing the thickness of these is 5/8 of an inch thick, I need to take that off of 36 for both sides. What that does is it gives me 34 3/4. So that's what I've marked. We're gonna make 4 cuts at this length, and those 4 cuts are gonna be the sides of the box. Now for the next couple of cuts, I need to do the top and the bottom side of this box that we're making. And based on the way I've drawn it, we're gonna need 29.5 across the top and across the bottom. And that's full length, because that's side to side. These will be sitting on top of those sides, which is why we cut those a little bit shorter. All right, we've got the tops and the sides cut. We wanna get this box put together, glued up, and make sure that it's good to go before we start messing with that trim, because I don't exactly know how I want it to sit onto the face. So I don't want to start cutting it or messing with that or the back pieces until we have the box put together. So that's our next step, is to assemble this box. All right, now that we're ready to start putting these boards together to make the box for this rack, I'm gonna use a Craig jig that we have. I believe this is the K4 setup. and it, you know, it comes with the little vacuum attachment and your block here. Basically, the way I have this set up right now is for 5/8 inch thick lumber. So in that case, you'd want, I'm using cedar, so we'd want the pocket hole screws for soft or plywood, 1 inch in size. And you know, these are indoor, so if you're doing something outside, you might want to get the outdoor versions. Here's what these look like. Little square tips. And I've got the square tip Craig bit in my impact driver, although I don't wrench that thing down when I'm putting them in. And then I've used the guide here on this side to set my locking bolt for the drill bit for the Craig jig in the rigid screw gun. So we've got everything set up and ready to go. Now, one thing I will mention, this is cedar, it's not super cheap. I used some of my cuts just to make sure that I had all my settings correct, and I just ran a couple on the back side of it, clamped it down and screwed it in, and everything looks really, really, really good. On the alternate board, I just held them together, made some marks where I want these to be to offset, and that's it, so I can line them up on here and make the cuts. All right, we got these drilled, and we've got them offset from each other. As you can see, we don't want to line up any of them screws together. So on the side that I'm going to glue, I'm just going to take some sandpaper. I'm just gonna rub it across there. This is just some 120. I'm just gonna try to free up any burrs or anything that are on the glue side before I clamp them and before I screw them together. For the glue, you know our favorite around here, it's the Gorilla wood glue. We love it. Works really, really good. It doesn't foam up or anything like that, and it is for indoor or outdoor. I really, really like it. It works great for us, so that's what we're going to use today. And I'm just going to brush it out to smooth it a little bit. As close to square as I can before I start to put the pocket holes in. So now let's clamp her down. So we've got the front and the back side clamped now, and I'm gonna go ahead and put a few more clamps. I do want to be careful though, this is cedar, so my metal clamps, I don't want to overly press and then scar up the wood. All right, my next step now is to get these screwed in place. So again, we're going to be using the 1-inch Craig screws right here. And in the rigid impact driver, we've got the square tip that came with the Craig K4 set. So this is what we're going to use. A lot of screws to put in. All right, we flip this over here. I'm gonna get this excess glue cleaned off really fast. I don't wanna leave it sitting and then have to worry about trying to sand it, so we're just gonna wipe it off really quick here. All right, we've got these things seamed. I cleaned up the glue a little bit. Overall, I'm super happy. I think the sides are gonna look really, really beautiful with this wood. I really tried to pair up the way I thought it would look really nice. So that is our sides. Got a really clean seam all the way down. Inside is obviously rough, which we'll sand before we put it together. The outside is already pre-sanded, but I still need to do some finish on there and maybe give it some edges with the router. But for the most part, I'm happy with that. So that's gonna be one side, and we've got one more side to do, and the top and the bottom. quick reference back to these original sketches I did, I need to cut 4 of these internal spacers, and then I quick mapped out the total width of that bottom section, and I just subtracted out the width of both sides of the board since I'm going to be covering both sides, and I need 4 cuts that are 9 3/4. So for those we've got these 1x4s of the same cedar, and I've got 4 8-footers, way more than I need because I'm going to be using them to create some of the top and bottom trim as well. So Alright, since these boards are rough finish on one side, I've got our Delta planer set up. I'm just gonna run these through just to basically get the rough side off. Here's one that I already did. You can see it turns out really well. Both sides end up being super smooth. That way, since both sides of these are gonna be seen from the inside, it'll look really nice. Okay, so we've got these spaced out correctly now. The first time I didn't mark the 5/8 in on each end, which is for the boards that are gonna be basically out here like this. So now, each of these will basically just go on center on these spots, and that's where I need to mount them. So the next step is I need to get some pocket holes in these to attach them to the board, and then we'll be good to go. All right, the next step here is to get the side pieces installed. I got the center separators in, and I want to put the sides on so that I can attach a top bar to just temporarily hold the thing into a square, because otherwise I can't start putting the face and the back on, and I just want to make sure that everything is right the way I have it right now. Like I said, I'm just kind of building this as I go, so that's going to be my next step. Got some glue here on the end. All right, and for inside the corner, I got these 2 pieces cut here, and basically my plan is to have this in here as an extra support, and I'm gonna nail through the outside into it with the air nailer, and just to help square the whole thing up once we get it together. And we've got a little Freeman brad nailer that we're gonna use for that. All right, now that we've got the bottom assembly pretty much together, minus the front plate, I've got one of those other 1x6 pieces, and I've already ran it through the planer, and we're gonna get this attached to the top. So this is the piece. It's pretty cool. I got a nice clean side that we'll see from the front, and this is gonna go up on the top now. That's the next step. All right, I've set it on the floor, and if you'll notice, I leave the back part of this open because when the rifles go in, some of them are gonna be taller, and they're gonna stick up out of the back side. So what I'm gonna do is, to make sure that it's the right size, I've already verified this is the same length as the bottom plate. So the next step is going to be, I'm gonna go ahead and I've got the pocket holes already screwed already drilled on the inside. I'm gonna screw this into here, and then I'll go do the other side to make sure everything is perfectly squared up. I don't have clamps that would be designed for this, so I'm having to just hold it with my hands. Got to make do with what you got. we go. All right, so we've got the rough frame of this thing put together. It's looking pretty good. And check a couple spots really quick with the square. And that upper corner looks really good. And I think the other side is doing well also. Yeah, looks good. I wanted to catch you guys up. So with the gun rack, I needed to get some padding down below. I test fitted the rifle in there and it didn't feel sturdy on the bottom. So let me show you the foam that I found to cut to fit down in the bottom of this thing. And then the next part too is we gotta build like a support for the backside that the rifles can sit into. Remember, I'm just making this up as I go. I've never built something like this before. So let me show you those two features before we get going on those. All right, so here is that first piece of foam that I fit in there. And I've got a little temporary back piece and a little temporary front piece clamped in place to show that little box there. And I just needed something, and I found this diamond plated like pads, and these are pretty cool. They cut real easy and they serve the purpose. You know, they have a little bit of give, but not too much. And I'm just gonna set those in place. I'm not gonna glue them or anything. That way if somebody needs to take it out in case something spills, they can. And this is the foam stuff. I believe it's like for floors. You can just like put it together. And I just bought like a pack of it. And it cuts super easy with a razor knife. And that's actually what I was doing. I just basically cut them to size, have a metal ruler, just laying that down, and just running the razor knife down the sides of it and cutting them to size. So that basically then you take it over and then they just fit in here. That's the idea. This one's a little bit too thin because it's cut for the side, it's cut for the end. So it'll probably fit better. Yeah, it fits nicely down here on this end because I have that little extra piece in there. So that's the foam padding. So when you see this going in, that's what that is. For the support here, I marked my rifle. So let me show you what I mean by the back brace. Basically, these are supposed to go in mag facing out. That's how they would go in. And you can see now why I needed some kind of padding, just something to sit this on. So you can put it in here at an angle, or you can have it straight on. And then up here at the top, you see my gun doesn't stick out at the top, but others may stick out. So what I was trying to do was mark on an angle where I would want a support to come out. And my plan is to use one of these, like a 1x4 piece of lumber, and trap it across the back to the side here. And basically have this be in there with little grooves cut out of it in order for the rifles to sit down into it, or shotguns or whatever. And all the foam pieces are in and ready to go. All right, so I've cut a thick 2x4 support that's gonna go across the back of the inside. And this is the piece that's gonna have the notches for the rifles to sit into. I decided to do 2x4 just because I thought it would not only look a little bit better, but I thought it would just have a little bit more thickness to that look. And I'm gonna be cutting away a lot of it, so I wanted it to look a little bit more substantial just for the looks of it. And I'm gonna sand it all down. So basically what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna mark the center of all of these gaps, because that's where I would want, you know, someone to sit the rifle in place, and it's gonna be basically in the center of these gaps. So that's my plan here. Is I'm gonna use a hole saw. I'm gonna cut right in front of it, like this. And this is my 2-inch hole saw. I think I'm gonna go with that. It's a little bit bigger, but I think it's gonna give it more room, because what if the rifle is a little bit taller and I still have a little bit of maybe a front handguard or stock or something that's making it thicker up here at the top, and I think this would be better. So I'm gonna use this to make these cuts, and that's almost gonna blow all the way through the front, so I won't have much cut left over, but it's gonna start with that here. actually gonna see if I can use the miter to clean these up really fast, and we're gonna try this out, see how it works. I think that's gonna be just fine for what I need. All right, I think for the most part it's a little bit rough, but I think I can sand off the rest and straighten it out really nice. All right, so these are the 1x cedar trim pieces that are gonna go around the edge, and I'll show how that looks here in just a second. But I got some 1x cedar and I had to rip these down on the table saw. Just rip these down to 1 inch, and then I did a 45 on each end of them. The more difficult part was this, and I lost the footage of me cutting this. My phone kind of got messed up and I had to get a phone switched out, and I record all of this on my iPhone. Anyways, then I went back and cleaned it up with a router, and I used a like the rounding edge bit there. I believe it's a 1/2 inch bit. And then here was me testing some different stain colors on the cedar. This was just a clear, I believe this was called American Walnuts, this was called Early American, and this was called Coffee. And it seems like this is the one we're gonna use. Everyone has liked it that we've shown it to, and it just looks really cool. So I think that's the one we're actually gonna go with for the final look. Now let's take a quick overview back at where we are with the rack before we assemble. And with the rack itself, I basically just did some more sanding to get it ready. And down here on the bottom, kind of the same, just getting everything ready to go for the final assembly. And here's a piece of that 1x trim. If you look, this is the idea here, if this thing will focus. That's the idea. So the trim is gonna be on the front edge, and that's the part that's gonna have the shells, the bullet casings mounted into it, and that's actually our next step, is to get those holes all drilled out. All right, I've got this one sanded down and cleaned up just a little bit, and I think overall I'm really happy with the way that looks. And you know, I don't have a drill press, you know, just doing everything by hand with my screw gun, but I think it looks okay. And just to put this up here, I think I like, you know, that look. I think it's going to be aggressive enough to give this thing just kind of a one-off style to it, and I think it's going to look really cool with the sides all done, with everything in there. I think the best way to do this is going to be to stain it first and then put all the casings in. Otherwise the casings are going to get all mucked up by the stain. So I'm going to go ahead and knock out the rest of these three, and once I get them all ready for stain, I'll jump back in to show you guys the next steps. And here's everything. All the holes are drilled. I've got them sanded as much as I can here on the front end, and I'm basically just going to put the stain on. And the stain we're going to use is the Minwax gel stain in Coffee. I really like the way it looks, and I've got a little piece of sponge that I use. This is what I normally stain with, works really well. And that is what we're going to do now, so let's get these stained. Those dry for a little while. And again, the sponge is great because you kind of clean up the excess as you go, and it gives a really nice look. I love this coffee color, the gel stain, awesome. Check it out, Coffee. On to the next step. All right, so we've got the stain applied to all of these, and I'm not going to seal coat until after I put the casings in because I want to be able to protect the face of the casings. So the next step is to basically put these in, and I used a 3/8 bit to make the holes, which is the exact same size as the casing, so hopefully these go in pretty smooth. On my test pieces, it all turned out really well. So I've got a bag of those 9mm casings, so I'm going to get some of these out, and we're gonna start to put them in these holes. And so here's one of those up close, and basically the idea would be to get them lined up, and they kind of press in a little, and then you have to use I've been using a rubber mallet to kind of tap them in, and then I have a little 7-ounce hammer if they're a little bit harder to put in, but that's basically it. So that's the next step, put these in these. All right, and just a detail here, I am leaving just a tiny bit out. This is more of like an aesthetic decision. When I ripped these boards down, I wanted to have enough to where I could show like a little bit of the front of the casing sticking out. And from far away, you know, the trim kind of has a little bit of just a different look. And I really liked that. So I wanted to give it some extra character. And that's the reason for leaving these sticking out just a tiny bit. And that's basically it. It looks like I am basically just using that 7-ounce hammer. The mallet really didn't work at all. So not with this. These are just a little bit too tight. But I'm also not getting any scarring on these. They actually look really cool. So I'm just gonna keep going and try to get all these in so we can try to put lay out this trim and see how it looks. All right, so these are those 1x trim pieces. And like I said, I did have some footage that was up here before of me kind of putting these things together. But I had some issues with them splitting a little bit as I was putting the casings in there. So once I started having to clamp and glue, and I added some nails, kind of some support nails, you can see here. I did some 3/4 inch brad nails through the sides just to kind of help support a few of these. And I've got them sealed. And what I used for the seal was the water-based Minwax. So to go with the gel stain that we had over here, there's the Minwax, the protective finish that I put on there. And then I went ahead and stained that center support piece as well. So it's ready to go. And now I've got this guy set up and ready, fans on, and we're basically just gonna get this stained. All right, so I got this thing stained. Well, the parts that I'm gonna stain. Here on the inside, it's actually gonna be that felt material or foam like we talked about. So the next part is I'm gonna try to get the trim pieces actually clamped and glued in place on this. So let's do that. Okay, so I've got these dry fit in place just to make sure that everything kind of lays out like I want. And I've went ahead and marked off my clamps where I want them for the height. And I'm gonna be trying to basically put some glue on the back, glue them down, and I'm hoping I can avoid having to put any nails in here. That's my goal. I really don't want to have nails and fill those in, but we're gonna see how this works. Making it up as I go, so that's the next step. So I did decide to put some nails in this. These are 1.25 inch 18 gauge nails, and I've got a brad nailer that we're gonna use. I'm gonna try to put the nails into this outside edge, obviously, so I can get into this wood, and just pray that I don't blow through the face. All right, we got everything glued up yesterday. and I got stain on some of it.
Hey you helping? All right, 1 second.
All right, so we got all this glued up, everything in place. Down here in the bottom, those pads are gonna get glued in, so we're gonna take care of that. I've got some 3M adhesive I'm gonna spray in there, and then we're gonna sit those in.
I forgot to tell them our names.
This is the middle of another video, we're good. I also need to put a support in here across the top, and that's what we're gonna actually cut now, a couple of support pieces to go across the backside.
Daddy, where's that square wood thing? By the saw?
Yeah, it's for extra support.
Can I take it out?
Yeah. Alright, so the next step, I have to put some supports in here. And I'm going to have one all the way up at the top. And then I'm going to space the middle one out where I have my center support that actually holds the rifles and then lean. And then I'm going to have one more about this far left, give or take, mounted in place. And these are just those sanded cedar planks, super lightweight, still not adding a lot of weight. And I'll put these in before we put the back plate on. The back plate will kind of be like the last piece, so I'm gonna get these attached now. And again for these, the 1-inch pocket screws and the bit that comes with these things, the square tip bit. So 1 inch is what you want to use for the 1/2-inch boards. All right, so I've got this in where I think I want it, and on the back side of it, I'm leaving a little bit of a space because it needs to go a little bit forward, and we're gonna have one of these 1-bys fit in there directly behind it to give it some extra support as well. And what I did was, I went ahead and fit one of my rifles in just to see how it sits in the opening, because the top stays open, and then I put one of the pads in just temporarily. So this is how it would sit. It's gonna sit down on the foam pad, and then it's on an angle. It sits well in these little cutouts that I made, and then the top will either rest here or it'll actually stick out through the top, because this part will remain open for taller rifles. But that is how that's supposed to look. So now I've just got to get this in there, and then one more cross support, probably about right there, going across the back before I close in the back of it completely. Okay, I've got this thing laid face down, and what I've done is I've attached one of these planks directly behind the piece that holds the rifles, and I put some glue in there underneath to kind of hold these two pieces together. And now I'm going to put some screws going across the back to make sure I cinch this down to the back of that piece, and this is going to be like my main rear support, so I want to make sure that that one's really, really solid. All right, so we're ready for the seal coat. Just a little quick update. I think I'm actually gonna leave the back panels off. Everyone that I've shared it with has seemed to really like it just kind of feeling open. I don't know, it kind of looks cool. I guess it depends on what kind of wall you actually put this onto. The last thing I need to do is secure this on the side walls. So there's gonna be screws that basically go through here to just help secure that. And I'm gonna take it outside onto the deck and do like just a matte seal finish on the whole thing. And that's pretty much gonna be it. I do have somebody bringing some rifles by to like kind of test it out. I wanna make sure that this thing can hold the weight prior to doing it in the giveaway. But other than that, I'm really happy so far. And we'll do some really, some nice footage here at the end to show it off as we wrap it up. All right, so we're gonna use this 2x ultra clear, well, ultra cover. It's matte, but it is clear finish. just a spray, and this will spray over the outside of it. All right, we've got this clear coat sprayed on. I'll probably end up doing it a couple times just to give it some extra protection. Since I am gonna have to like ship this thing somehow, that'll be fun. And once this dries, I can put those pads into the bottom, which I don't have in there yet. And I did get the screws in, as you saw, the supports. So those are showing a little bit, so I may try to color in just the edge of those just to kind of hide it a little better. But overall, I'm pretty happy with how this thing has turned out. Looks really cool, photographs well, and hopefully will look good on somebody's wall. Okay, we brought this inside and I've got my spray 3M, just like a multi-purpose adhesive. I'm gonna be spraying that onto the back of these foam pads and then placing those down here into the bottom.
Saw we got the brand done on the back just to mark it. Not too happy with this spot, but the rest of it looks really good. And this is kind of a rough finish on the backside, so it is what it is. I think it turned out okay. Budget branding irons, I'll have a link to them in the description as well. And the next step is on this piece here, which is the support. It's the one that we need to put the thing that's going to hang this on the wall. So let me show you what we're going to be putting on here. And here is the product, picture hanging system. I got this at Home Depot, and here on the top tag it shows 200 pounds, so it's by Hangman, I guess that's the brand. They sell these in like the hardware section, that's where I picked it up at Home Depot. I'll try to find a link and then put that in the description for you guys as well. And basically it's this long track, you can see here on the back, that you're going to screw onto whatever you're hanging, and then the other part goes in the wall that has a level. And when those two things work together in unison, then you get 200 pounds of holding force. And based on what I researched, each individual rifle is going to weigh between 7 to 10 pounds basically. I can have 5 of those in here, and I'm actually not sure what this weighs, but I mean, it doesn't weigh more than 50 pounds. It's actually really light because it's cedar. So I figure I should have about 100 pounds to spare using something like this to hang on the wall. So my plan here is to get this installed, and then we're going to hang it up and test it out and see how it looks, and that way wherever it ends up it'll be safe and ready to go. We got the bracket on the wall, and now I'm going to lift the gun rack up and hang it in place, and then we're going to put some weight in it and see if it can hold the expected weight. And initially with it on the wall, it looks really good. It hugs to the wall pretty tight. Even with that, kind of my finger there for reference, it's very, very tight line. It doesn't have any movement left or right. It feels very sturdy. Again, that's with no weight. So let's put some weight in it and see how it does. Okay, so I found a board to put on there, and I've got some kettlebells that I'm gonna set on here that are 50 pounds together. And I think that's gonna be a good test. Remember, this thing will hold 200 pounds. Average weight here, maybe 10 pounds a piece. If you had all 5 in there, then hopefully you're not exceeding that target. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put the weights on here now. All right, so just to show one last time how this would work. So you guess you could put it in this way or this way. I kind of like the way it feels going in this way. The top part is hollowed out at the top, and it has plenty of room for mounted optic. And then if it was tall enough, it would stick out of the top of this thing. And then to take it out, you just lift it up a little bit, pull it out through the front. There you go. All right, everybody, thanks for watching this video. It means a ton to us that you guys support the channel, and I really hope that you enjoyed this build. It was really extremely challenging for me. Learned a bunch of new things as I went, made a lot of mistakes, and also figured out a lot of really cool stuff that I can use in the future. Again, info on the giveaway is gonna be down in the description. It's gonna be with Apache Rifle Works down in Boerne, Texas. Super cool place. My friend AJ is there and hooked me up with the opportunity to be able to give away this thing there. So Be sure to check out the instructions below. Go to Instagram to follow us for more information. I'll post some stuff on Facebook too. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next project.